It may sound like I'm banging on a well-beaten drum at this point, but that doesn't make it any less true. The worst affliction upon the oppressed is not an ignorant mind alone. It is instead an ignorant mind that has been fed false knowledge. Because an ignorant mind alone might continue to search for the liberating truth that frees it. But an ignorant mind that has been fed false knowledge, believing that the false knowledge is true, stops searching for the liberating truth and becomes mentally enslaved by the false knowledge. False knowledge also transforms its believers into wardens of their own mental prisons because it makes them fight against those who are trying to free their minds by teaching them the truth. In fact, some of our people are so mentally enslaved by false knowledge that trying to teach them the truth that frees them is literally as difficult as trying to feed medicine to the dead. Many of our people are afraid to learn the truth because our identities are now so deeply connected to the false knowledge. This is the case in regards to Black people that now believes in Jesus and Willie Lynch. Please critically think and apply common sense. If the stories of Jesus and Willie Lynch were true knowledge that could possibly lead to our liberation, those two literatures would have been kept as far away as possible from us instead of being so oversaturated within our communities as they presently are. This is common sense because oppressors never make liberating knowledge easily accessible to those they are trying to continually oppress. However, the literatures about Willie Lynch and Jesus Christ have been made easily accessible to the Black community because they're both false knowledge that mentally enslaves us. Here's how. Our beliefs in the Bible mentally enslaves us by making us complacently wait for eternity for a fictional Jesus to return from heaven to rescue us. And our beliefs in the Willie Lynch myth mentally enslaves us by making us believe that our core problem is an internalized one. It makes us believe that there's something internally wrong with us, which creates profound feelings of hopelessness and self-doubt within our ability to actually liberate ourselves. Believing in Jesus Christ and Willie Lynch actually prevents us from learning the truth that's necessary in order to liberate ourselves. Those of us who don't critically think never notices our mental change. They've got our people so mentally enslaved by these false knowledge that telling the Black liberating truth now literally offends millions. Many of our people also rejects all Black liberating truths because of the inherent call for action that comes from accepting the truth. They therefore instead cling to their false knowledge, which allows them to remain complacent, stagnant, and mentally enslaved to the benefit of our oppressors. However, the sooner we learn to accept facts, the sooner we will stop being mentally enslaved by false knowledge. In order to truly liberate ourselves, we must gain a clear, concise, and accurate understanding of our plight and condition. Because if our understandings are flawed, then all of our liberating strategies that stems from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. We must learn the truth in order to develop the proper counter strategies that are necessary in order to liberate ourselves. This is why those of us who knows the truth must teach. Here's the truth. The supreme art of war is to subdue an enemy without fighting. That's from Sun Tzu, the book, The Art of War. The white oppressors have achieved this objective in regards to black people. They've developed a control system that allows them to continue their subjugation of the black population without any black resistance. It's the truth of our plight and condition. It's no strange coincidence that millions of black people now think in ways that are beneficial to the white society. It's always by deliberate design whenever the oppressed population starts thinking exactly as their oppressors wants them to think. Black people are the most manipulated and controlled group in history as a result of the constant programming and conditioning by way of mass media and public education. Today, the white oppressors now subjugates the black population without any black resistance by deploying psychological warfare propaganda campaigns that manipulates our collective minds in ways that serves and protects the interests of their white society. Through their monopoly over information that we receive, which logically allows them to control what we believe, white oppressive forces have manipulated millions of black people to think in ways that are against our own self-interest and instead in ways that serves and protects the interests of their white society. The eyes are useless when the oppressors kept ignorant. So those who know the truth must teach. Case, point, and proof. I will therefore demonstrate that the common false beliefs held by millions of black people are directly connected to white propaganda campaigns. 1. The reason why millions of black people are now self-loathing and now perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies is because of the white media's propaganda campaigns that exaggerates the issue of black on black crimes and that subjects us to receiving only the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. The reason why millions of black people now perceives it that slavery benefited us is because, again, by fraudulent white propaganda campaigns that miseducates us to believe that our ancestors were ignorant and uncivilized before the Europeans invaded. And because of media propaganda campaigns that subjects us to seeing only the fraudulent, worst, poorest parts of Africa. That miseducation and media propaganda campaign literally makes millions of black people feel indebted to the white society for having brutally enslaved our ancestors, because we've been manipulated to perceive it as having been more of a rescue mission that ultimately benefited us. That propaganda campaign makes many of us feel indebted to the white society. The reason why some black people now feels inherently subordinate to whites is because all narratives and study results, all information from white sources favors whites over blacks. Through constant repetitive programming, this subliminally embeds the myth of white racial superiority into the subconscious minds of many black people. Instilling this myth into the subconscious minds of black people makes many black people feel subservient towards whites, which aids the white society in maintaining its social dominance and social capital over the black population. The reason why millions of black people now believe that most of our enslaved ancestors were sold off by other Africans is because white historians rewrote history of the African slave trade to favor their white society. Their revision intentionally makes the white invaders appear more humane and less immoral, and it shifts the blame of the African slave trade more greatly upon we Africans. Furthermore, this fits with their false narrative that black people are our worst enemies. To further convey the falsehood that most African slaves were sold off by other Africans, several white artists were hired to create pictures of Africans selling their fellow Africans to the white invaders. Reproduction of those drawings and paintings can still be found within our American school textbooks, even today. Therefore, every time that an African American student reads about the African slave trade, those pictures are placed between the text, subliminally conveying the message that it was our fellow Africans that wronged us and not the white enslavers. We are being programmed to think in ways that benefits the white society. Furthermore, to believe that the greedy white invaders went into Africa with weaponry advantage of guns, rifles, and cannons and gunpowder, but rather than maximizing their profit by stealing most of theirs, like the enslaved, they instead found some way to purchase most of them, is absolutely BS. Because such a claim totally contradicts over 500 years of demonstrated behavior by whites in regard to black people and making profit. That's total BS. Furthermore, critically think and ask yourself this question. If Africans originally owned all of the gold, diamonds, minerals, and natural resources, and Western money had no value whatsoever in Africa, how then did the white invaders purchase most of their enslaved Africans? Clearly, that's not the case. The human mind is like a computer. No matter how efficient it may be, its reliability is only as great as the information fed into it. If it's possible to control the input into the human mind, then regardless of how intelligent people are, it's entirely possible to control what they will believe. We are the books we read, the education we're taught, and the media images and contents that we watch. Because these are controlled by the white society, they've exploited this scenario to manipulate our minds in ways that benefits themselves. In fact, to create an elaborate prison for our minds. The nefarious practice is called ideological subversion. It's an offensive psychological warfare tactic wherein which the dominant population exploits its monopoly over information and media images that are fed into the minds of the subordinate population by deliberately feeding the subordinates disinformation, misinformation, and distortions that are designed to shape our collective minds and thoughts and behaviors in ways that are against our own interests and in ways that instead serves and protects the white society. This is the truth. They have deployed an ideological subversion system against us. And this is why we speak negatively of ourselves and favorably of them. We must function based on what is true in order to liberate ourselves. When we try to liberate ourselves based upon a biblical fairy tale and a silly slave syndrome myth, that's like a people trying to liberate themselves using a comic book. That's as ridiculous as a child going into war with a toy gun. I know. They've got people so mentally enslaved that telling the truth offends millions. But we must function based on what is true in order to liberate ourselves. Brothers and sisters, wake up to our reality. One love and peace.